Hello, how's your day going? Hope it was a great day and continues to be a great day. And I wanted to continue our Dvar Torah from yesterday. So yesterday I spoke to you about why we count the days and the weeks. Today is 9 days to the Omer, which is 1 week and 2 days. We count the weeks and the days. And I gave you the psychological explanation, and we explained how sometimes we get to perfect and overcome and eradicate our insecurities and our weaknesses. We become the weak people, and some days we're the day people that just deal with our challenges in the day and how they express ourselves in the thought process, etc., etc. I'm not going to give you the whole spiel. We did it yesterday. You can go back to yesterday to see it. But today I want to speak to you about something else. You know, every mitzvah we do, there's unimpacted. We hear shofar, our ears hear the shofar. We wrap tefillin, it impacts our hand. Even if we don't feel it, we don't understand it. We give charity, it impacts the poor. But what's the significance of counting the Omer? What's the difference if I say today is 33 days to the Omer? Does it change the fact? Does it change the days? Does it change me? What's the big deal? And the answer really is that the reason why we count the Omer, because you see, there's Jewish peoplehood and there's Jewish identity. On Passover, we became a people. We got our freedom. We can finally be free. What do we say in the Haggadah? Today we are free. Today we are Ben Chorin. We are free people. But when it comes to going out of Egypt, we recognize that being a free people is not enough. We need an identity. You can be free. But what does that do to you? What do you become by being free? You could sit on the beach and do nothing and sip a pina colada. How's that going to change who you are? We needed that identity. An identity we got on Shavuot when God gave us the Torah. So we had, the moment we left Egypt and we became a people, we immediately started counting down to our identity. We recognized that being a people alone is not enough. A Yid needs an identity. A Jew needs an identity. He needs a relationship with God. He needs a set of rules. He needs a Torah. So immediately we started counting. From Pesach to Shavuos, we count the Sfirat Omer. We go from peoplehood to identity. And that's why the counting is so important. Because the counting itself recognizes our becoming from a people to an identity. And that transformation. And that's why the counting of the Omer in itself is very significant. Now, what's the difference between a week and a day? A day is a natural cycle. You have sunset, sunrise, gives us 24-hour cycle. That's the definition of a day. A week doesn't have any natural cycle to it. In fact, you think about the month is the lunar cycle, 29 and a half days. Our year is 365 days, is the solar cycle. But what natural connection does the 7-day week have to nature? In fact, if you know the history, during the French Revolution, they tried to make a 10-day week. And later on, during Stalinism in Russia, they tried to make, or earlier in the 1929, they tried to make a 5-day week, and they put it into the calendar. You know how long it lasted? A little over a decade, both times. The 10-day week and the 5-day week. And then it was regulated to the dustbin of history. And historians have always tried to think, why? Why is there a 7-day week? What's the significance of 7-day week? Why? Was it maybe because it almost equally goes into a month of 4 times, almost quarterly in a month? Or was it some other phenomenon? But they can never understand it. But as Jews, we always know what a week is, right? Because we know from the time of Adam and Eve that God says 6 days God created the world, and on the 7th day He rested. A Yid knows that Shabbos is recognizing God in the world, is recognizing the supernature, is recognizing beyond nature. That's the 7-day week. So you see, listen carefully. Throughout our history, there's been 2 types of Jews. There's been the weak Jews, and there's been the day Jews. What's the difference? The weak Jews are someone who says, you know, they recognize and they say their entire identity as a people, as a nation, the DNA of a Yid, and the kishkas of a Jew is our relationship with God, is our connection to the Torah, is our spiritual identity as a people. What makes a Jew? It's Hashem. It's his connection to Hashem. Listen, the tefillin has been the same before electricity and after internet. The gefilte fish and the matzah balls have been the same for millennia. And so has all the history of the Jewish people. The Torah has been the same. What makes a Jew who he is? It's his connection to Hashem. Those are the weak Jews. And then there were the day Jews. The day Jews said, listen, buddy, we need to be a nation like all nations. That's who we are. We need diplomats. We need relationships. We need to set ourselves up for success. Look, the Jewish people are part of nature of the world. They're day Jews. We're just like everyone else. They recognize, yes, the Jews have had extraordinary survival. All right, that comes from a set of skills. That comes from certain circumstances. But at the end of the day, we're day people. We're part of nature. We're part of the nations of the world, and that's how we are. And this has been an argument for millennia amongst the Jews. Are we weak Jews or are we day Jews? The day Jews who looked at nature of the world, looked at the weak Jews and said, you're just weak. You're meek people. Don't you realize we need an army? Don't you realize we need to fight for ourselves? Don't you realize we need to have a strong identity? And the weak Jews looked at the day Jews and said, you're a bunch of dazed. You're dazed Jews. You're verschlafen. Don't you realize that we would be nothing without God? That we would never be here? Our survival is miraculous. And the truth is, till 1948, it was hard to argue for the day Jews because we had no nation. We were scattered all over the world. We had no army. We had no way of defending ourselves. But then in 1948, we got the state of Israel. And people said, now for sure, we could say we're day Jews. You see, we're just like every other nation. We have a country, we have an ambassador, we have a president, we have a prime minister, we have borders, we have technology, we have medicine. Today Israel broke through with an antibodies cure that hopefully will cure coronavirus, even though it might take months. Israel has been at the forefront of protecting its people. We're a nation like all other nations. And that's why the Torah told us that when it comes to counting the Omer, when it comes to counting our story as a people, from people to identity, we have to realize you can't just count the days. You can't just think that we're a nation like all nations. But you also have to count the weeks. And think about it this way. A day goes in the week. A week doesn't go into the day. At the end of the day, even for those who think we're days people, we need an army. Of course you need an army. We need to fight for our identity. We need to contribute to society. We need to be engaged with the world. But come on, at the end of the day, we have to also count the weeks. We have to recognize that our existence is miraculous. That we are who we are because God chose us. God chose us to be a light upon the nation, to bring morality, to bring ethics, to bring monotheism to the world. So that's why, on a historical level, yesterday I told you the psychological level, that's why on a historical level, we count Hayom, Tisha Yamim, today is 9 days. Yes, we recognize the value of the day Jews, of being involved and engaged in society and being part of the natural cycle. But don't forget ever, Shehem Shavua Echad, that it's 1 week. Don't forget that we would never be here. We would never have our identity, our survival. We would never thrive if not for the fact that we are just like Shabbos, just like the 7-day cycle. We were dedicated by God. God made the 7-day week. God also created the Jewish people. God gave them an identity. He gave them a Torah. He gave them a mission to the world. And we have to be proud of that. So when you count the Omer, there's deep significance to it. In the way we deal with our soul and our character traits and the way we struggle with them and sometimes overcome them. But then there's also the deeper historical significance of the weak Jew and the day Jew. And the idea that we always have to remember that no matter if you're a day Jew, remember that 7 days make a week. There is no identity to the Jewish people. There is no identity to the land of Eretz Yisrael that God gave us, if not for God. The reason why we have a claim to Eretz Yisrael is because God gave it to us. The reason why we have survival is because we're weak Jews. So my friends, it's okay to be a day Jew, as long as you count the weeks too. And if you count the weeks, and you're a spiritual Jew, and you recognize the DNA of God connecting us to the world, that's great. But don't forget that we have to be engaged in the natural cycle of the world. God wanted us and put us on this world to fight for ourselves, to have an army, to protect ourselves, to engage with the nature of the world, and be the best citizens we could, and the light upon the nation we could. So listen, have a great day. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Enjoy the sun and all those around you, and we'll see you tomorrow again.